So, welcome everybody, and then we're going to lead into a conversation talking to Warner Brothers about some of their tools and tooling, and go into some of their workflows. So flow production tracking. Uh, I guess I should introduce myself first. I'm David Mason. I'm the flow production tracking specialist, sales executive for Europe. I've been working with the flow production tracking team for almost 10 years now. I was a producer working in film and television in London previously to working at Flow Production Tracking, the Shotgun. And I was working in film, doing live action, VFX and post-production, working as a post-production manager and using Flow Production Tracking and Shotgun the entire way. So since coming onto the back-end team, I've seen sort of how it works in the back end, and I've been helping studios set up and build their production workflows for the last 9 years. And I would like to welcome Kevin Porterfield. He is the pipeline supervisor at Warner Brothers Animation. Julian Herrera, senior pipeline engineer, also at Warner Brothers, and Karina Benesh, who I think is in a hallway, but is really helping with us to be on this call, who's an associate producer. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And a lot of people may recognize me and say, "Who is Kevin Porterfield?" I go by KP often in this community, so that's you can call me either one. But it's great.
I thought I'd use the professional coding first, but I know him as KP. I've known KP for many years. He's kind of a pillar of the industry. He was working on the Shotgun team back when I was abusing it on the producer side, and I was peppering him with questions about how to use it and how to fix it. So I don't think there's anyone more qualified to be able to talk about these things, in my personal opinion. So yeah, I kind of want to just let you guys take it away and sort of share some of your bits and pieces.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see
Looks good
things.
to me.
All right. All right. So welcome. As David said, we're from Warner Brothers Animation. We rely heavily on flow production tracking and Autodesk's tools around that, and could not run our studio or pipeline without it. I thought I'd give you kind of a high-level overview of how we work. We're primarily a 2D animation studio. We do some 3D, but we're very focused on the 2D workflows. We produce a lot of episodic content and DTVs. You'll see, an occasional movie out of our studio, but the bread and butter for us is 2D episodic shows. And in-house, we're doing a lot of the previs, asset design, color assets, a lot of that part of the pipeline. And then we rely on a lot of very talented and wonderful vendors all around the world to do the shot work. So we take those assets once we have done the work, done the reviews, done the iterations, we send them out to vendors, and the vendors will do their magic and then deliver their shots back for our review, typically through Aspera, as you can see in this lovely animation that I put together. I am not an animator. I'm not artistically inclined in the least bit, so don't judge my
It gets the point across.
talents here. And then once the stuff gets back to our studio, we go through review, we take notes and send the notes back to the vendor using our tools, and then repeat that process until everything looks good. Meanwhile, everything is getting approved and brought over into our post pipeline. This is the most boring slide I have, sorry. But we will editorial puts the edits together. Ultimately, everything gets re-reviewed and then shipped out to networks once it's all color corrected and set to go. We do have an internal animation pipeline that may take over some shots as needed. on that in that realm, but for the most part, we're focused largely on the asset pipeline in our studio. So at any given time, we can have up to 50 shows or so in production, and that's a lot of juggling. That's just a lot of stuff going on. We're very different from, say, a feature animation studio that might be working on one show or two or three max at the same time. We've got a lot of stuff going on at the same time because they're episodics. Primarily, it makes it even more kind of crazy. So and in addition, it's not just Warner Brothers Animation. We're not just one studio. We're actually three studios. So we've got Cartoon Network, Hanna-Barbera Studios in Europe, and WBA. So that adds to a lot of the complexity as well. So we've got multiple shows. We've got different locations, Hanna-Barbera being in Europe. And WBA and Cartoon Network are based off out of Burbank. We have multiple workflows, and they all have different pipeline requirements. And we have two engineers and one production superhero, and the three of us are on this call. So the three of us are responsible for the pipeline for all of this. And we could not possibly wrap our heads around it and come anywhere close to managing the chaos if it wasn't for Flow Production Tracking. So, what parts of Flow Production Tracking do we use? We use most of it. Obviously, the web application that David just demoed, we're using much of that. Almost, we've got custom entities that we've built, assets, tasks, all of that. We're utilizing Toolkit heavily to hook into our pipeline tools. We're using both the review app, get rid of the creative. I guess they've dropped that.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't tell you.
The new review app that is in public beta now, which is fantastic for web-based review. RV for stuff that requires a color accurate review and high-res media. And then obviously we're also hooking into the API through the Python and REST API, through webhooks, through AMIs. This is all the glue that helps keep all the different pieces of our pipeline together and running. And the benefit of all this, and this is just the big point here. When you're in production, it's incredibly imperative to have a single source of truth. If you've got multiple systems running, they all need to be pointing to the same single source of truth. Otherwise, you've got different information, different places. You do an Excel export, 5 seconds after you do that export, the data in it is out of date because everything's live, updating in Flow Production Tracking. So we utilize all of these pieces to make sure that we can rely on Flow Production Tracking to be our single source of truth and keep everyone on the same page. So here's how, very basic, it's not nearly as cool as Autodesk slides, but we've got Flow Production Tracking here in the center. We've got it hooked up to our artist tools using Toolkit. We're primarily using Photoshop, but we are also hooked into Premiere. There's some Blender. There's some other apps as well, but we're primarily in Photoshop. So that gets the artist connected. Because of our pipeline, we're doing tons of shipments and deliveries. So that is a huge part of it. We hook into as well to make sure that we can keep track of everything that's going out, which versions of assets are going out to which vendors and which shipment. Same with deliveries coming back from the vendor. We know everything that's coming back from vendors, where it's at in the pipeline and in the review stage. We've got several web services that Julian will talk about in a little bit, but We've got a lot of AMIs that hook into those. Um, we built several production-focused custom apps and tools that run off of um, the Toolkit framework that are launched from the desktop app. This gives production the power and flexibility to do things that they need to do to make sure that everything's staying up to date. And then we're also leveraging webhooks. Um, we were using the shotgun event daemon, which is a trigger system that allow, kind of like if this, then that. It's, built in Python. Um, but it's kind of a fire hose scenario. We've migrated all of our triggers over to webhooks to be a little bit more focused, but allows us to trigger things all over the pipeline whenever certain events happen within flow production tracking. A shot gets marked as approved, things happen. So that type of thing. So as I said, we're using Toolkit quite heavily. It's great because it provides a single framework for all of our tools. Um, we primarily, even with all the shows that we have going on, we primarily have a single config that we customize just ever so slightly per show. Um, but for the most part, our config is pretty much the same for all the shows. This makes it easier for us to manage and and update as needed. It required a little bit of planning as we were building it out, but it is based on the what they call the DEFCON 2 config that Autodesk published out as a baseline for a config for Toolkit that allows you to control your file system and hook into all of your apps. Um, but it provided a great starting point for this. And then we have a custom deploy process that basically looks at every show and any modifications that it needs to make, it'll make to the config before it updates it for the show. So these modifications, as again, they're pretty small, but not all of our shows use the same file system root. So some may be on um, one file system, some may be on another. And we track that information actually in Flow Production Tracking so that when the deploy process is starting, it looks it up in Flow and then makes the adjustments. Same with most of these other settings too. There's some delivery settings. Obviously, our file system structure is going to be a little bit different for 2D and 3D shows. And then any specific pipeline exceptions, I mean, it's production. Every show wants to do things their way. Our job is to say no. Just kidding. Our job is to scrutinize the requests, and there are sometimes some very valid ones. So we just try and filter those out. And when we have those valid exceptions, we um, will implement those into our deploy process. And then we also have pipeline settings that we store in Flow Production Tracking as JSON in a custom entity. All of our pipeline tools have some sort of customization that each show may need. Some shows may need certain fields to work with an app. Other shows may need another field to work with an app. So we decided the best way to do that was to store all these settings within Flow Production Tracking itself. Um, Again, we're kind of continuing on with the single source for all information. It's easy to customize for different shows. We don't have to open up code and make adjustments and then commit the code and do all that, redeploy. We can just update these settings on the fly right in Flow Production Tracking. And then to make things even easier for our engineering, we just built a Python package that handles all the settings and defaults and stuff like that. This is kind of a pattern that we're following all along the way when we've got certain needs around this for engineering. We'll build a Python package that kind of manages things. So this hooks into customizing our reports framework, all of our AMIs, the movie validations that we do for our deliveries, Toolkit app settings, and even we control some permissions for our custom apps so that if there's production applications that we've built that get launched from the desktop app, it'll check and see, hey, wait, are you an artist? Because artists aren't allowed to launch this. And if the person is an artist, it'll just throw up a window and say, hey, sorry, you're not allowed to run this. So lots of good, useful ways to kind of pull information from one source. One additional thing we do is with flow production tracking on the pipeline side, we were running for a while and couldn't really understand which of our apps that we were developing on our team were actually being used. We didn't know which ones were being used a lot, which ones were being used a little. We could ask shows, but that's not really good data to get back. So we added just a very little bit of code into some of the hooks that Toolkit provides. And immediately we had the visibility into all the usage that we needed. We can track what version of desktop people are using, what config version people are using for Toolkit. This way we could see, oh, we made an update last week. This person hasn't picked up that update yet, so we can follow up on that. See which platforms our artists are using and our production teams are using. The tools, per show reporting, we can see all this stuff based on, filtered down to the show. We can see usage over time. And then we also added in some performance metrics for our triggers. We had lots and lots and lots and lots of triggers. And sometimes when schedules get updated or some big updates happen in flow production tracking, somebody will import a big Excel file. It's a lot of updates to process all at once, so a backlog could happen, and we wanted to be able to kind of get some visibility into that all in one place.
This is so cool. Sorry.
Yeah. And then, again, going back to our specific pipeline, deliveries obviously are a huge part of it. We send all our stuff out to vendors. They have to send all their stuff back in. We need to stay on top of that. That is critical for us. If deliveries fail, if they don't come in, if they get, held up, if some of the files get corrupted along the way, we need to be notified about that. So we have delivery tools that are completely driven by Toolkit and flow production tracking. We have, when vendors send media back to us, we have validations for naming convention, codec, resolution, per task, all stored in pipeline settings, and all using custom-built apps that run off of the Toolkit framework. And then when we ingest all those files, it copies the files, creates playlists, versions, published files, transcoded media, sends notifications. I mean, without this, it would be really difficult to be managing all the volume of deliveries that we have coming in. So with that, I'm going to pass it off. I guess Julian's going to be running the slides, but I'll pass it off to Karina to talk a little bit about some of the production side of things, and then Julian will go on and start talking about some more of the pipeline stuff that we've done.
Ooh, let me start sharing here.
Cool. So sweet. As KP was saying, for our productions, because we have a variety of different projects types, such as 2D, 3D, episodic features, we utilize these project templates that we've customized to our needs. These templates have all the same pages, but they're slightly altered to reflect what type of project it is. So within the templates, we are able to have a set page a set of pages with simple filters that give each of our shows a starting point of all of the baseline tracking needs that we're expecting of them. And it gives them a nice jumping off point and allows for us to be able to scale up to more complex workflows if needed. So if you go to the next slide, we have two examples today of our standard pages that we have all our productions use. This first one is our project details page. This page gives a production a real-time overview of how the project is progressing through our pre-production phase. So we have tabs set up on the right-hand corner for each episode. And then under each tab, we have different widgets that list the overall status of each asset in the episode, the number of each type of asset we have in the episode, and additionally, the status of the design, black and white, and the color tasks for any of the assets linked to the episode. And then if you go to the next slide, Julian, clicking on any of the bar graphs show a pop-up window revealing a detailed list of the info that creates those charts. You saw this in some of David's slides, but it really allows for some tight control on any outstanding assets. And next, okay, so this is a version counts page. This page is set to show the amount of versions we create per week for each artist, along with the status of those versions. And this is really super helpful for us to evaluate workloads and ensure our scheduling is accurate. So you can see the first widget has the list of artist names, how many versions they created that week, and how many of those were marked as retake, needing notes, or approved. And then we also heavily use the Flow Production Tracking website interface for a majority of our non-color related reviews. And we've really started implementing the new review app. Our directors are specifically very excited about this compare version features that allow for quick review comparison to previous versions to ensure that all notes were addressed. And we're excited to continue to roll this out to our shows, and we look forward to where this is heading. So yeah, I'll pass it fully over to Julian now.
Cool. All right, so I'm the senior software engineer on the team. I know less about the web interface than KP and Karina are capable of forgetting. So I'm mostly in the APIs, the REST API and the Python API, and I just wanted to show a couple of the different tools we've been working on or released. And also to kind of emphasize that Flow for us is both this great tracking platform, but it's also pretty much our backend that ties all of this stuff together. So this should have text on the left. Oh, there it goes. Oh, okay. I thought these were all on one thing. I'll have them all come up at once. This is a tool that surprised us in its popularity. So just goes to show that sometimes not the most complicated tools are extremely useful to production teams, and this one's an asset renamer. This was one of the first larger projects I worked on when I joined a little over 2 years ago. And essentially, I'll never forget the request was they had a mustard bottle in a show that was a hot oil bottle previously and was continued to refer to as that for the entirety of the show. So anytime you wanted to talk about the mustard bottle, you had to know that you were actually looking at the hot oil bottle files. And the reason that is once you've generated a lot of media for an asset, renaming it isn't as simple as going into the database and saying, this is your new name. There's tons of files on the file system that might be affected by this. And so as you can see in the screenshot in the back, you pick a new asset name, it validates it, makes sure that it matches your naming convention and make sure there's not a conflict on the server. And then it goes ahead and lists all the files it's going to change. So you can see it has versions and their published files. This can include actual versions that went up, as well as snapshots of people's work in progress anywhere in the file system that old name might have been used is then gone and updated. Where Toolkit really shines beyond tracking and having a place to put all these new names and stuff is in the Toolkit libraries and code functionality that it provides. So a file name isn't just a long string where we're searching and replacing for the old name and putting in a new name. Toolkit's aware of all of the path as a set of tokens. It's aware of the root file system that you might be using on this particular project, on this particular platform. And so it's looking at tokens. It's looking for the asset name in this path token and able to surgically sort of replace that name in different places. That means our config can change. We can start moving these tokens around and changing how we store our file structure. And this tool will continue to work because it's not dependent on any hard-coded regular expressions or searching for things or replacing it. It is all completely dynamic based on the fact that Toolkit knows everything about this file down to how to recreate its path and where it should live on the file system. How do we know this is one of the most popular tools that we have out there? And that goes back to what KP was sharing about the metrics platform. All of this is flowing into Flow Production Tracking. The Toolkit hooks in, we get a nice dashboard, and we know that people really like this tool and use it a bunch. So that's one. Another fun tool is our Photoshop asset template. I wanted to share some about this because it uses the Photoshop engine. When we absorbed Cartoon Network, they started all of their projects from a very specific template that my understanding was being sort of assembled by hand. So they had like a Photoshop document and they'd go in and type in all this stuff. We quickly realized that this is all very predictable and automatable. So we built two versions of this app, one of them as an AMI and another one here within Photoshop directly. This is a cool approach that lets artists sort of take control of seeding their projects. So they can sit down. This drop-down menu on the left shows my tasks, so I can see that I need to work on Frankenstein Jr.'s color. I hit create template, and I get the template on the right with all the necessary layers, all of the data filled out. A neat thing about this, and going back to what KP had mentioned about pipeline settings, is that every production can upload their own template. So in this case, the template just has some framing guidelines, but other shows include characters in there as sizing reference. Maybe they include different framing guidelines for different options. They can put whatever they want. That's stored in Flow. And when this tool runs, it looks from Flow for what layer, what PSD template this production wants to use, pulls that in. And so every show kind of has their own ability to customize what this looks like. Of course, it pulls in the show's logo and the studio's copyright symbol, all that stuff. So you get a nice looking template at the end of the day. Once this has run, your context, as you can also see in the Photoshop screenshot on the top right in the shotgun panel, your context is set to that actual tasks. So now you're directly into that Flow Production Tracking load and publish and review loop without leaving the tool, without having to worry about what to name a file as you save it or where it's going to go or anything. You just sit down, make your template, and get started as an artist. Lastly, and probably the bulk of my bad. Didn't mean to close that slide that early. Hit play on this. All right. Lastly, the bulk of what we have sort of on the software engineering side is in our web-based tooling. And this just kind of goes back to that single source of truth for everything. This runs our AMIs, our webhooks, the whole sort of platform there. Just as a quick example on the AMI you're seeing here, it says select task template and it defaults to color 2D. Going back to those pipeline settings, that's a configuration that shows can set. So when they run this tool, if they have their own default task template, they've configured that. They don't have to mess with that dropdown. They can submit a list. As you can see, it's pulling in statuses, thumbnails, component names, all that stuff from Flow Production Tracking. And this web platform really lets us kind of build whatever tools we need. Bulk of that is reporting tools and sort of asset seeding and generation tooling. So that's what I've got. We build a lot of stuff. So little highlight reel.
Oh, amazing. That was awesome, Julian. I mean, all of this information is great. I think KP's got a little bit more though.
Well, I'm just going to tie it all together. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Karina. So just as a summary, having a single source of truth for production in our tools is just absolutely imperative. Like I can't even stress that enough. If you couldn't tell from my little sparklies on that slide from a while back. It's incredibly flexible. It can meet the production needs for any weird workflows that we have. And like every studio, we've got some weird ones. But we have yet to run into one that we can't kind of leverage some of the tools that Flow Production Tracking has to kind of help us navigate. Toolkit provides an excellent framework for us to build tools on top of. I mean, that's a no-brainer. It's so flexible and so wonderful to work with. Yeah, there's quirks here and there, but they're very manageable, and ultimately the end result is fantastic. Um, I'm really enjoying this. Is kind of something that they've been working on for a while, but it's coming together now. The review ecosystem is starting to feel very unified. There's there's the overlay player, which is the old web-based app. There's the review app that is new and in public beta. That's their new web-based video player. There's RV, all those things. There's other tools as well, but they're all starting to feel very similar in feature set. So there's, a lot of the annotation tools and the notes panels and things like that. Everything's kind of feeling the same. So when we are doing reviews in the web, on the web app, it's not doesn't require a serious color evaluation. That's going to work pretty much the same way as when we're doing color reviews or high res frame accurate reviews in RV, which, but to answer the question that I saw pop up, if it's critical to get frame by frame animation feedback, especially if it's color based, we'll kind of migrate to RV for using RV for those types of reviews. And then the support is strong, both from Autodesk and the community. The community around flow production tracking is immense and fantastic. People have matriculated in and out of different studios. This whole animation VFX world is very incestuous. People go from one studio to another, and there are people who have been at the same studio forever, and it's just a wealth of knowledge. And flow production tracking has kind of been a part of this evolution since 20 years ago. However, I don't remember how long ago it started, but
19, I think.
um, there's a wealth of knowledge out there, and the community is really dedicated to helping each other out and sharing their experiences, which is fantastic, both in the open source community, and also there's a community website where people are posting questions and answers and stuff on that too. And all this allows 3 studios with 50 plus shows running at the same time for different mediums and 2D and 3D, multiple countries, all to be managed by a small team of us 3. It's pretty massive, and take time out to do this webinar too. So it's pretty great. So anyway, that's my wrap. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, KP. That's super interesting. I've already got questions. I'm probably going to ask them quickly before we get into the Q&A stuff. But I really wanted you to share stuff about how customizable it is to use ShotGrid, and you kind of went with it and said, okay, you can do all of this stuff. So it's amazing to see the kind of things that you're doing with inside ShotGrid and around Toolkit, flow production tracking. I'm falling back into my past, but the hooks metrics. Was there any interesting data that came out of that? Like some tool that you'd spent tons of time doing and then no one ever uses it? Or was it just that amazing asset renamer that was the star of the show?
Yeah, there was some surprises in there. I mean, as the asset renamer was a big one. As Julian mentioned, I think that one immediately shot up to the top. And, we'd heard about it from email and, some requests from production, but didn't really know how much people were in need of it until we released it. So that was the big one. And yeah, there were a couple tools that we thought were way more important that end up not being used at all. And again, it's tough because you hear production scream and scream, and it's like the squeaky wheel, and you think, oh, this must be really important. We have a storyboard notes tool that is used, But for a while, it was all anyone was screaming about, and it's not used nearly as much as we initially
I mean,
thought.
I'm sure I'm going to have people asking me how they set that up, just based upon knowing that you've done it. So I'll be preparing a bit of a chat about that. But and also the asset renamer. That sounds like it's a very complicated thing. In my head, there's so much to change names. There's a lot of file systems. There's other databases. Like, did you have to modify your structure or your pipeline to make the asset renamer work, or did it just strap on and do everything you needed?
No, we didn't have to modify anything, but there were a lot of fields because there's like SG movie files, like unrelated to the path. There's the path cache. There was just kind of one of the hardest parts is really making a full map of where all these things can potentially be that have the name in it. But no, it got through all of it.
Just to piggyback off that, when you publish with Toolkit, um, there's a lot of information that gets transmitted to Flow Production Tracking so that it knows exactly where files are, the context, the dependencies, all of that, and all of that gets saved into Flow Production Tracking. So this is what Julian was talking about, is when we created this tool to rename things, we had to make sure that we were not just renaming the asset, but also all the file paths that are being tracked, all the actual files on the file system, and then we do a gut check to make sure everything matches up as expected before we commit to processing them all.
Across three studios, across 50 shows. Sounds easy, but achievable, and it looks like it works really well. I was just going to jump into a couple of questions that came in. So, in your opinion, one second. In your opinion, what project demanded the heaviest use of flow production tracking? And I guess that's a bit of an open question for you guys.
Um, it depends on, I guess, the type of project. The 3D projects that we end up working on from time to time, those are the ones that get used a lot heavier, I think. There's a lot more media, there's a lot more pieces that need to come together in a 3D pipeline than 2D. Um, and I think also maybe because we're not focused mostly on 3D, we're mostly on 2D. When 3D comes up, it's a little bit harder for us, and we lean on Flow even more. But there's also been other shows. I think Harley Quinn, I think, is one that just had just a massive amount of media and stuff going back and forth, and it's everything gets tracked, so that was another one. But I don't know, it just kind of depends on the creative of what the show is like.
Oh, makes sense. I mean, this is a fantastic question from Abby. I mean, you're the perfect person to answer it. Because you guys do a lot of delivery tools and you've got lots of customizations. Are there any other elements or automation tools like the asset renamer or creating the starter templates that you've created that you found were really helpful for production efficiency?
Ooh, that is a
Yeah, I mean a number. In Premiere, built a tool that helped just flatten edits, and then queue those into media encoder, and then submit those to Shotgun, create versions, all that stuff, so that the editor didn't have to sit there and subclip every shot and name the subclip the name of the source shot. It kind of goes left to right down the timeline and does all that. I don't
You
know.
could talk about the color workflow that we're working on right now if you want.
Yeah, so color workflow, the way our design process sort of works is that every asset starts off in black and white with our design 2D task template. Once that's approved, it becomes a new asset that has the same name, but adds some additional color keys to the end. So at that point, after the black and white, you're aware whether it's in a scene that's day or night. So if you have a character, let's say Bugs Bunny A, the black and white design, you might have Bugs Bunny A day or Bugs Bunny A night. This, of course, only happens after the black and white design is approved. So we're working on a tool right now. We have previous iterations of the tool, but we're working on a more sort of flow-centric approach to this that keeps the artist in an AMI that basically shows them all, given a sequence of shots, what are all the approved assets that were used in the sequence of shots, what all day and night times and whatever custom color keys might be applied to that. And then it's going to show you a list of the new assets that it's going to make. It goes ahead and makes those. It takes the last version of the black and white design and makes it the version 0 of the new color design. So artists starting have that. The template we showed earlier, when you start an asset, it loads in as a thumbnail a version 0 if it exists. So by the time you run the color keys workflow, you have all your color assets, all properly named, all with a version 0, and the color 2D task template assigned, which used to be a very time-consuming process, and we're hoping to get that down to literally a button click.
Yeah, this is actually something that production's been asking for a while, because it takes several days sometimes for them to actually go in and kind of put things together so they know which color assets they need to create, and copying things around. Even with some of the piecemeal tools that we already had, we're just trying to bring it all together into one flow. And this is different. 2D is different than 3D. We can't just like use the same asset that's black and white and then call it a color asset later. It doesn't really work like that. We need to track them separately. So that's why we're creating all new assets for this type of stuff.
And would you say the bulk of your tools are in the tool, like the DCC applications, i.e. with Toolkit running them, or is it more action menu items, or is it kind of a split, or you've got a lot of stuff going off webhooks? Where's the sort of the bulk of integrations happening? Everywhere. Everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whatever we feel like it's going to be the most appropriate for that particular use case. If it's somebody, if it's an artist working in Photoshop, actually, I'm not even saying it. Just depends on exactly what it is. So we look at it from at the beginning and decide which way we want to go with it.
Cool. We've got a question from Perry. I'm a novice compared to you guys. Are there any classes, certifications, or licenses available to increase my ability? I kind of learned on the job. I didn't know coding when I started using Toolkit. I reached out to the support team, and the engineer I got put in touch with was KP, who taught me a bunch of things about my pipeline and how to do it, but I didn't write any code beforehand. I think doing is always a fantastic thing to do, especially if you've got a task to do it with, or a studio or a team, having a job to do it. But getting more, classically trained on it, I guess it's a bit of a variable. What would your thoughts be, guys?
Well, I think
I learned the same way as you.
Yeah,
I learned the same way as you on the job.
On the job is definitely the most ideal. But if you have a project that you want to just like take a whack at, I would say go ahead and do that, and then rely on the community site for help and support as you have access to it, and just keep banging away. I do think that there used to be a couple of classes out there like
there's a few training courses with a couple of people. I think Redefine was one of them, and there's one in the UK that's happening up north in Ireland. But there's so much documentation online. There's so much tools and things you can pick up, and just by like trying to do one tool, you'll learn so much about how it works just by trying to fix it. So I must say Flow Production Tracking 3 for the first 30 days. All works out the box. All the tools we've shown so far, the ones I showed, work out the box, all nice and vanilla. And you can customize to your heart's content, much like you saw the guys show. I know we're running out of time. I think I might be able to squeeze in one more question.
The YouTube channel also has a lot of great videos that you can follow to learn.
Yes, done by an ex-teacher who has got more experience in the software than I do. So they're very, very helpful. For generative schedule, can assets be added to scenes or sequences as dependencies? Tasks get added to each other as dependencies. So you can have tasks to be dependent on other tasks, and those tasks can be linked to different assets. So that's how they sort of link together. So the tasks connect together, but they link to an entity. So you can have, it's a bit weird because you're on a non-entity task page context, just a task context. It's possible. Yeah, so definitely possible. And one last question before the buzzer. Is it necessary to know coding to use Toolkit, or is it only for giant multi-studio projects? Fantastic question. No, I didn't know coding when I started using it. I set up and ran it to do shows for a 45-man studio without having set up a pipeline before. All I needed to do was customize YAML files and read a bunch of documentation. What are your guys' thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a gentleman in the community whose name is Michael Romy, who I used to work with, who is a guru now. He's like a massive, like his brain just makes my brain explode. He's very smart with all this stuff, and he did not know anything at all coming into flow production tracking. And I talked to him a little bit about using the API, and he went on to just like, iterate and move through it and just exploded. He didn't really have any experience around that before, so
Wow, he's a legend.
he is a legend. And I think you can dip your toe or you can dive full in, and I think once you understand the concepts, I think the concepts are the first thing you need to kind of wrap your head around. Once you understand the basics and the concepts, then getting into it is pretty easy and nice.
Amazing. Thanks so much for your time and answers, guys. I know we've just hit our hour mark, so unfortunately we've got to disappear. I'd love to stay and chat some more. Hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future. And yeah, thanks for everybody for coming. I think a survey got sent out, and yeah, see you the next time.
Thanks, everybody.